What's going on, YouTube? Today I bring you my number 6 power rank team for the 2021 NFL season, and as you saw by the title, that is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, we're skipping number 7 because that's actually where the Packers would rank, except I already did the Packers video a while back when it seemed pretty clear that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to play, and then of course he had to throw a wrench into my plans. And so the Packers would have been number 7. Basically, what I said from the video remains true to a lot of their stuff, except for quarterback. Obviously, getting back, in my opinion, the number 2 quarterback in the league, who is still an amazing quarterback, obviously helps out the team, but there are still obviously a few holes and lack of depth on the team. Regardless, you're here for the Baltimore Ravens, and without further ado, let's get started. So, starting out with the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, I think, is either super overrated or super underrated by most people. He's not a passer, but that's because he doesn't need to be. Now, the issue with that is that soon enough, it seems like he might have to become more of a passer because teams are figuring out how to stop him. I mean, it's just, quite honestly, if you're good at one thing in the NFL nowadays, yeah, that's great. It'll work for 1 year, maybe a couple, but teams are going to figure you out at some point. That's why a guy like Mahomes is so great, because he's not good at just one thing. He's not just his arm. Lamar, unfortunately, in my opinion, is just his legs. I think he can throw the ball, but I also don't think he's going to be the quarterback that leads this team to a Super Bowl or anything. I just think that he's a bit too easy to stop, especially by the better defenses, that you can't really lead him to a Super Bowl with that unless Lamar really does evolve as a passer, and they did go out and really try to upgrade the receiving room this offseason, so we'll see how that works out for them. But, I mean, Lamar's still a top 10 quarterback. Anyone who says he's not a top 10 quarterback is just dumb. He is, but he definitely needs to improve on his actual ability as a passer if he wants to lead these Ravens to anything. Behind him, the GOAT, Trace McSorley, one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He's a guy that can step in and give you something at least similar to what Lamar gives you, and he can throw the ball honestly close to as good as Lamar. So McSorley, a really good backup there. Tyler Huntley is your third, whatever. But overall, you have a top 10 quarterback who needs to improve on his passing, but still a top 10 guy with a pretty good backup. That's going to get you an A- for right now. At the running back position, J.K. Dobbins, who had a really solid first year, to me, he's a pretty obvious breakout. I think as the Ravens go to more having Lamar as a passer, they'll start to lean on their running backs being actual running backs a bit more, and even being the fact that Lamar was still their main runner last year, J.K. Dobbins still actually had some really nice stats, so I would be far from surprised if J.K. Dobbins gets over 1,000 yards this year. He is a really, really talented downhill runner and will knock you over on his way to the end zone. Gus Edwards actually also makes for a guy that could honestly start and could actually start on many teams. So him being your number 2 makes a actually very good underrated running back duo there for the Ravens. You also have Justice Hill as your third, and he's also a really solid third. I think Mark Ingram gave this team some good depth at the very least, but I just don't think he really fit what the Ravens were trying to do. Regardless, you do have a really nice trio here and a really good duo, and potentially one of the brightest young stars in the NFL in J.K. Dobbins. So I'm going to give this room a B+ for right now. At the receiving room, and like I said, they really tried to upgrade it this offseason. Your number 1 coming in is probably going to be Marquise Brown. Sammy Watkins, might take over week 1 like he normally does, but, he doesn't have Mahomes this time. But, Marquise Brown, I just feel like he's kind of, disappointed, to be honest. He's been fine, but really, you gotta worry with guys like that, because he was kind of coming in at a time where Tyreek Hill was really setting the league on fire, and, everybody wanted speed. That's why Henry Ruggs was the first receiver off the board when he should not have been. That's why I just feel like guys like Jalen Waddle, for example, I think Jalen Waddle holds a bit more upside than a guy like Brown, but Brown is a guy that just was a lot of speed, but really impressed in college, but he just not making it in the NFL right now. So hopefully he does. Maybe it's been a matter of the fact that Lamar just hasn't been a passer, but we'll have to see. He's probably your 1 coming in, though. Your 2 probably going to be Sammy Watkins, who, he's been pretty good for the Chiefs these last few years. I don't think he'll be as good. Obviously, going from Mahomes to Lamar, but he's probably still going to be the number 2. Can move up into the number 1, but I wouldn't bet on him being that good of a number 1. Um, yeah, I mean, I think he was a fine enough signing. Just, you shouldn't be expecting too much from him. I did really like the pick of Rashad Bateman, though. He's a really nice physical, almost speedy threat. I mean, this guy had a lot of what you were looking for in a receiver. To be honest, I'm still really surprised that he fell where he did at the draft. So that was a steal by the Ravens. Great pick up there. And I think he'll actually be their number 1 going forward in the future, but he probably comes in as their number 3 to start the year. They've got some decent depth behind that. No one really worth talking about besides, Jalen Moore and Miles Boykin bring some nice depth. But the 2 guys I do want to talk about here is Devin Duvernay and Tylan Wallace. Both more under-the-radar guys that have extremely high ceilings, especially Tylan Wallace. I liked both of these picks when they were taken. I don't feel like both of them are going to work out, but I feel like one of them will. He'll kind of be that surprise guy to take over for Sammy Watkins after his little stint here with the Ravens. Wallace, an incredible speed threat, but also, just brings that nice route running. And again, just a guy with extremely high upside. And Duvernay as well actually showed some nice things for Baltimore last year. So potentially he comes in, in year 3 and takes that starting gig from Watkins. But either way, this is a receiving room that, it's not very good, but maybe that's been a bit because Lamar hasn't really been a passer. Regardless, there is some extremely good young talent here for the Ravens at receiver, and for that, I'm going to give it a B- for right now. At tight end, Mark Andrews, in my opinion, the 4th best tight end in the NFL right now. I don't expect that to be the case. I think he'll be number 5 after this season because just this guy named Kyle Pitts is coming into the league this year. But Mark Andrews is still a very good tight end. Nick Boyle, one of the elite blockers outside of an offensive lineman in the NFL. So he's good to have there. Josh Oliver is a nice depth tight end. But, I don't even know who Eric Tomlinson is, to be honest. But Mark Andrews, though, elite tight end. I mean, he's not Kels or Kittle, but he is Mark Andrews, an elite blocker and a pretty solid depth guy. So that's enough for me to give it an A+, I think. But, fullback Patrick Ricard, one of the best fullbacks in the NFL. Enough said. Left tackle, Ronnie Stanley. That is going to be a big addition for these Ravens, who were missing him pretty badly last year. I mean, Orlando Brown actually did a solid job filling in, but it almost sucks because he ended up downgrading a right tackle because he ended up wanting to be a left tackle after, finding out he was good there. He got his wish being traded to the Chiefs, which is fine. He ended up getting Rashad Bateman out of that. But, still, I think I'd rather have a tackle than a potentially really good receiver, but potentially. Either way, Ronnie Stanley, getting him back, big upgrade for these Ravens. And Tyree Phillips, Michael Schofield are some okay backups. But really, Ronnie Stanley, one of the best in the game right now. That's going to give you an A- just because the depth isn't there. But at left guard, Ben Powers. I really was hoping Ben Cleveland could, play well in camp and start here because he was one of those guys where I felt like he could start day 1, but he's just unfortunately not been in camp enough. So your left guard going in is probably going to be Ben Powers or Patrick McCarry. Now, I don't think Ben Powers is good or anything, but I would prefer him starting over McCarry for sure. I mean, maybe he's better at guard than he is center, but McCarry was downright awful at center last year. Either way, you don't really have the best starter in the world. I still love Ben Cleveland. I think he has a ton of upside for the Ravens, but, right now, obviously, he's not going to make that big of an impact. So left guard definitely could be better, probably will be better for the future, but for right now, it's really bad. So it's going to get an F+, just because, again, that upside with Cleveland and maybe McCarty is a bit better at guard than center. At center itself, Bradley Bozeman is an upgrade over McCarty for sure. That's for sure. But is he that big of an upgrade? Not that big of an upgrade. He's fine. I think he'll be good enough for the Ravens. No one behind him though, so it's just kind of meh. But Bozeman's not really even worth a meh. And then there's no depth. So I'm going to give it a D+ for right now. The interior for the Ravens is not the best in the world. At right guard, they brought over Kevin Zeitler from the Giants. I liked the signing. I think he brings some nice veteran leadership to the Ravens. I think he's still got some in the tank there. And it was definitely needed for a team that just, frankly, doesn't really have anyone else on the roster that should be starting right now, unless Ben Cleveland could have gotten some more snaps in at practice. Ben Bredson, I think that's how you say it, is Bredson, something like that, is a backup. No one really special or anything. So Zeitler, he's older. He's not, what he was, but he can still bring some solid play to the Ravens. And again, at least it's better than having, Makari play. So, no depth, older guy. I'll give it a C for right now. And then a right tackle, bit of a patch job. I mean, Villanueva, again, also not the guy he used to be, but it is better than starting a guy like Andre Smith or Adrian Ely. Although I do like Ely and his upside and his future potential, just definitely not a guy you want starting day one. They brought over Juwan James from the Broncos, but he's hurt for this at least a good chunk of the season anyways. So he did sign a 2-year contract though, so I mean he should be available next year. I don't remember what contract Villanueva's on. Either way, kind of similar to Zeitler, like he's an older guy that I think has something left in the tank. He played solid for the Steelers last year. He's switching to right tackle. Maybe it's a bit easier for him, but we've also seen that it's not just necessarily easier to switch positions just like that. But as a veteran, I'm sure it won't impact him that much. I mean, yeah, I like the backup with Andre Smith. I like the upside with Adrian Ely. After this year, Juwan James at least brings some nice depth. If not, hopefully can finally start for once in his career. Which is kind of sad because it's like he was actually a very good tackle with Miami, but that was just such a screwy signing on the Broncos' part. So yeah, Villanueva, fine enough starter for right now. He's a patch job though. So overall, I'll give this room a C+. So the offensive line, it's not the best in the world to be honest, but definitely helps when you have the most mobile quarterback in the game right now. And really, to me, it just shows how good J.K. Dobbins can really be because this offensive line is better than last year, but not by much. Well, I mean, okay, it's better. I mean, obviously getting Ronnie Stanley back, it's better. So that just shows you J.K. Dobbins really could explode this year. So overall, I like this offense. Very talented. It's young in a lot of spots. The offensive line's a bit of a patch job right now, but you can upgrade that. They've got offensive weapons galore, though, and depth to show for it. So offense, not an issue. And I mean, really no part of this team's an issue. They're the number 16 for a reason. Moving on to the defense. Defense is a bit more of a concern than the offense just because some of their guys are starting to get a little old. Derek Wolfe, I definitely, saw some, across the defensive line in general, there was some regression last year. Derek Wolfe was one of those guys, I think he's 30 or 31 now. I expect him to kind of drop off any year now. And there are some guys that could start, in his place, I suppose, Justin Ellis or Justin Matabuki. I probably wouldn't want Broderick Washington starting, but for right now, Wolf's there. You saw some regression, but, hope he doesn't fall off this year, but I expect it any year, to be honest now. So, yeah, I mean, Wolf kind of, on the teetering edge. You got some nice young guys who could take his place, but it's not like they're going to do anything special there. So, for that, the room, it's not the best in the world. I'll give it a D+ for right now. At the nose tackle position, defensive tackle, Brandon Williams, getting him back because I'm pretty sure he opted out last year, is an upgrade. Obviously, he's got some nice step behind him, though, as well. Justin Ellis, Justin Matabuki can take over if you want. Ellis, a solid enough backup, someone who can at least fill the hole when, Brandon Williams is out. But nothing special, obviously. No one else really to worth talking about there, though. It's a good room. Brandon Williams is a solid guy, so overall, I'll give it a C+. And then at the other defensive end room, Calais Campbell, not quite the elite level he used to be at, but he is still one of the best run defenders in the game today. And still all around, just still obviously a very good pass rusher. But yeah, just again, you saw some regression there. They had to address pass rush in some way this offseason, and they did. Justin Matabuki behind him. I do like Matabuki's upside, but I don't think it's really time for him to have to be starting yet. So hopefully you guys stay healthy. Hopefully no one takes a big nosedive. I don't think Campbell is ever going to really nosedive. I feel like it's going to be more of a slow decline for him. And I think the first year was kind of the first sign of that. So Calais Campbell, still a very good pass rusher. Matabuki brings some nice young depth. I'll give it a B for right now. So defensive line, it's solid for right now, but like these guys are definitely a bit older. They could kind of teeter. Williams is not really old. He's just not elite, obviously. So yeah, moving on to one of the outside linebacking rooms. I don't imagine. I guess you can really switch out McPhee and Bowser on who you want to start on the other side, but just being that, Bowser's over here, I'd assume Odafe Oweh's gonna start. I mean, I understand he's been hurt too, but like, he's so athletic. Like, I feel like you've got to at least try starting him to start out, because he could make an impact like day one. You really could. The thing about the defense on fourth though is it has some really nice depth. You have Odafe Odoe, probably starting. If not, Tyus Bowser starting is one of the more underrated guys in the NFL. He's going to be a solid starter for you. Also picking up Dalen Hayes, another solid guy. So that room all around pretty solid. Some nice upside there with those guys. I'll give it a C+ for right now. At the other side, outside linebacking room, I don't imagine Pramel McPhee would be starting either, because they brought in Justin Houston, and I don't feel like you'd bringing him to just be, depth. So I feel like he'd probably at least be starting at first. And I think he'll be solid for them to start out. Interested how he'll kind of play as more of that stand-up type guy now that he's been playing more of a, hand in the dirt role for the last, 3 or 4 years. But yeah, Pernell McPhee, also great depth, and Jalen Ferguson, also pretty good young depth there. So both these outside linebacking rooms, really solid, and some really nice depth as well. So this one, I think it's a bit better than the other room right now, just because you have an established veteran starter there. So I'll give it a B- for right now. But yeah, two pretty good rooms. At inside linebacker, Patrick Queen, I kind of sense a breakout year from him this year. I think he showed some decent things last year, but I think he takes that jump this year. Malik Harrison, a really nice, quick guy to have in that linebacking room. LJ Fort, one of the more underrated pass coverage guys in the NFL. He is really, really solid at what he does. No one really besides that, but you do have probably the best linebacking trio in the NFL right there, to be honest. And being at that, none of them are really even, I would say, good yet. I think Patrick Queen will be good this year, but I wouldn't consider him good yet. There is some good play here, and these guys are still young too. Ford's a little bit older, but regardless, you do have some really good linebackers here, so I'll give it a C+ for right now as well. At cornerback, yeah, it's great. You got Marlon Humphrey, one of the premier cornerbacks in the NFL right now. He's elite. You got Marcus Peters on the other end, who's also still one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. They make up for probably the best cornerback duo in the NFL. It's arguable at the very least that they're, one of the best. I'd say top 3 for sure. So that's great. Obviously, you have Jimmy Smith behind them, who is a little bit older, but, still definitely can play when you need him to. And more than you need him to. He's still a solid player. Tavon Young brings some interesting depth, as well as Sean Wade, who, he sucked last year, but I think he holds a bit of potential. I think this Ravens defense could definitely develop him into something. He showed that, around other top-tier talent in that secondary, he can play very good. So if you use him correctly around those other 4 guys, I think Sean Wade could kind of return to something of his previous Ohio State form. But yeah, so you have one of the best duos in the NFL, probably the best trio. An interesting young rookie, Tavon Young. I'm going to give that an A+. I mean, it's one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and the cornerback room is a big part of that, considering that the safety room is not all that impressive. Because starting off with the free safety, Deshaun Elliott, I think, holds a bit of potential, but I don't really see him being the future for the Ravens. The only other guy I really want to talk about here is our Darius Washington, who I do think is the future safety of the Ravens. I don't know why this guy went undrafted. Like, I understand his height is a bit of a concern. Like, his size is not very good. That does not take away from the fact that Ardarius Washington is a straight-up ball hawk. And he shows it, so I just don't understand the stigma of, like, short secondary players can't play. Because, like, look at Jair Alexander. He's one of the elite corners right now, and he's, like, what, 5'9", 5'10"? That's why I don't get why guys like Asante Samuel dropped and why Ardarius Washington went undrafted. To me, that was just ridiculous. The Ravens got a great pickup with him, and I think he's the Ravens' future starter there. And so, right now, free safety room, not very good, but I do think there is definitely potential with both those guys there, so I'll give it a C+ for right now. And then a strong safety, Chuck Clark, also not very good either. He's just kind of whatever. Geno Stone, I do like, though. I don't really know how he's been in camp, but I hope he's been good because I do like Geno Stone's upside, and I think he could also be a potential future starter for the Ravens someday. So, Clark, not very good either, but Stone holds some potential, some interesting upside, and so I'll give that a C- for right now. Safety room is not very good, but when I say it's one of the best secondaries in the NFL, that really just shows how good this corner unit really is. So the defense, it's a bit older. There's a few pieces to it towards like, well, this is a bit of a question mark, but overall, still one of the elite defenses in the NFL. And then taking a look at their special teams, Justin Tucker, the best kicker in the NFL. For me, it's just not even like, I don't have to think about it. Justin Tucker is the best kicker in the NFL. Enough said. Sam Koch, one of the best punters in the NFL. You're going to have some really solid receivers there with guys like Justice Hill, Devin Duvernay, Tyler Wallace. So yeah, and the special teams unit itself is pretty good. So these Ravens, across the board, a few positions where there's definitely some question marks, but even at those positions where, they're older, they're question marked, you do have some really good young depth behind those guys. So yeah, roster itself, really love. Let's go take a look at their coaching culture and schedule. And taking a look here at their schedule, one thing that does kind of bring the Ravens down here to number 6 is the fact that their schedule, it's pretty tough. I'd say the only easy games here really are the Raiders and the Lions, potentially the Bears. The rest are going to be really tough games. The division games are naturally going to be tough. The Bengals, Steelers, and Browns. Especially the Browns are going to be very tough games, and there are also some other games here that are winnable but very tough. Here with the Steelers, Steelers twice. Like I said, I mean, again, they're going to be tough, but they're winnable. The Dolphins, Bears, the Colts, the Broncos. Those are going to be some tough games, but like there's a lot of really hard games here. The Packers, the Chargers, the what am I trying to say? The Rams, the Rams, Chiefs. It's a tough schedule. So that definitely does bring down the Ravens a little bit. Now, like, they're still a very good team, obviously. Their coach is nothing to complain about. John Harbaugh, one of the elite coaches in the NFL right now, obviously. The culture, really good with the Ravens as well. I love the roster. I think there's a few holes, obviously, but that's not held this team back from being one of the elite every year. I just really think at the end of the day, the thing that brings them down to, quote, 6, bringing down, they're still, a top 5, or, well, a top 6 team, top 5 off the top of my head, at least, AFC team, is the division that they play in and their schedule, which is just very tough. I still think they'll make the playoffs for sure. I don't see any major fall from grace unless a bunch of guys get hurt. But, they have one of the NFL's elite rosters, one of their best offenses, one of their best secondaries. I think they gave Lamar help at the very least if they're trying to make him more of a passer, which they do need to do. I think you've got a bunch of guys who could break out. You've got some patch jobs, but at the very, these patch jobs are at least very good patch jobs with serviceable guys and stuff, good veterans. I think the Ravens have done everything right. It's just the only way I really see this season going wrong is if the schedule or division really gets the worst of them, or if there's a bunch of injuries. Otherwise, I really like this Ravens team, and there's really not much to dislike about them. So that is why they're here at number 6. But that is going to be the video. If you guys liked it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.